Welcome to our weekly conversations on artificial intelligence with thought leaders in Africa. My name is Zenzele Ndlovu. I'm the head of research and market development at Machine Learning Africa. We attempt to provide insight into AI and other emerging technologies and their inevitable impact in transforming business and the broader society. Please check out our upcoming event, the AI Business Conference. You can register for free at aiconference.co.za. Welcome to our conversations with technology leaders in Africa, where we discuss about these technologies, the adoption of digital technologies and AI and related technologies in Africa. Today marks the 9th recording, and I think it's been a wonderful journey so far, Johan. I'm sure Johan would agree with me there.
I would agree, Zenzele. Look, like we've said, we want to give exposure to people in our local market who are doing amazing things. And today with Lenore, I mean, we've really been focusing on culture and gender balance. And Lenore is a strong female leader, helping other female leaders. So I think it's important. So today we've got Lenore Kerrigan, who's a qualified chartered accountant. She's been in the local and global industry for many years. And Lenore, every time I speak to you, there's so much I can learn from you. So even though she's joining us today in a personal capacity, there's so much we can talk about when it comes to automation, smart automation, the future of our children, and so forth. So Lenore, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Johan and Zenzele. Thank you for the opportunity and also to address your audience on a subject very close to my heart.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. You have been in the industry for a long time. Surely we're going to learn a lot from you today. I'm very, very hopeful. Given the smart technology noise and the implementation and digital transformation, of course, obviously, there's the hype and the real technology that is happening. We've seen a lot of RPA adoption, artificial intelligence, machine learning, conversational AI, etc. Maybe from your perspective, how has been the uptake from the South African companies in terms of adopting these technologies? How would you describe the responsiveness and how you're finding the market in general?
So thank you for that question specifically to South Africa. I think what we are finding is the companies that are subsidiaries of multinationals in some form or another are definitely adopting the technologies. Sadly, what we are finding is there's broad pockets of adoption. But if we're talking about adoption at any sort of scale that is going to drive true digital transformation, and particularly with locally driven companies, that for me is not happening at the pace that it should be happening, and particularly under current circumstances and the need to transform. So, I constantly say there's a lot of digital going on. There's not a lot of transformation going on. We use this word DX or digital transformation, and I guess it's kind of what we saw in our own country. We so-called had transformation. Well, it's taken us how many years? We still don't really have proper transformation. So if I use an analogy like that, we have exactly the same situation here. Yeah. And that sadly is I think where we are not creating the right opportunities for the employees and for the workers in the environment. Because one thing digital transformation does do, and we have seen this now because of COVID, that you can actually work from anywhere. So we have no excuse to say, well, we're in Africa and we, these poor Africans and we can't do this. I mean, it's now an excuse. That's purely what it is. And if organizations would just train up their people on these new technologies, you can now use, and take a multinational, for example, to start there before we talk local companies.
Yeah.
You can train up somebody locally to become the absolute expert in a technology, irrespective of what it is, whether they are an expert in Python and writing an AI algorithm or in a particular technology. Your expert can be sitting in South Africa, but they can be providing their expertise to your branch in Mexico or China or wherever it might be. We don't have that mindset locally. And when I say we, I feel quite strongly the boardroom. The boardroom still has that very local way of thinking. And that kind of goes back to the local companies. We still do things the way we've always done them because that's what we're comfortable with. So it goes towards this, I always say the fast beat the slow. I mean, we know that. And we've seen there's been a number of organizations that have literally grown out of nowhere during COVID and lockdown because they've taken new technologies and new ideas and driven those, created jobs, a number of jobs. And in fact, there is scarcity of people for those kind of jobs because the traditionals, if I may say so, have not made that shift, have not skilled up their people. And now their people are finding themselves in job constraint situations. Not that the capability doesn't exist. We know we've got an incredible brains trust in this country. And we're not shifting that brains trust or leading people to see where the digital skills are of the future so they themselves can be the growth engine of our traditional organizations to become the new organizations through digital transformation. Long answer, but I hope that covers it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a very important answer, Lenore. I mean, you've touched on something that's close to my heart, and I know to Zenzele's, and that's about upskilling of local people, of our youth. And a lot of these large consulting firms will tend to bring in, it seems to me, a lot of talent from overseas, offshore centers and the like. And I think when it comes to the stuff that you are working in, I mean, intelligent and smart automation and kind of the Pandora's box that opens, which we'll touch on a bit today, I would assume a lot of the people actually implementing it are not necessarily locals. So two-pronged question, is that what you see? Secondly, is what can organizations do to turn that tide, to make sure they're using our own intelligent people for this kind of technology?
So you are right, sadly. There is a lot of offshoring going on. And in fact, the argument in the early days is because it was cheaper. Okay, well, hello, this is Africa. It's not cheaper. We've got great skills that are definitely probably now cheaper. Okay, so that excuse kind of goes away. But I think it's the fact of not really understanding how to skill people. And also a lot of traditional thinking about how you get skills. So I use this word traditional a lot because it's probably the safest word to use, but I think it is quite explanatory of what I'm trying to say. Now, again, as you say, I've been in the industry a long time, and I think somebody sort of mentioned that I'm sort of a legend in the industry, which I went, oh, heck, but yes, it's true. I've been here a long time. When I started my training to move into this IT space, if you will, to just give it when I moved as an accountant into IT, the only training you could have was to actually go into classroom training, where there was a trainer and there was a massive cost for yourself or the company to train you. Now, sadly, the people of my age group, largely sitting in boardrooms, have that mindset about skilling. That there's a huge cost involved, that it involves taking people out of the workplace, all those kind of things. Well, training and learning per se has fundamentally changed. You can gain a skill today on just about anything, anywhere, at absolutely no cost. But our mind shift hasn't moved to that. So we build what we call sometimes organizational development plans around these traditional training models, as opposed to building a proper skilling model around continuous learning. It's a very different shift. So what that means is you need to teach your people about continuous learning and be passionate about continuous learning, but then to also lead them on where the platforms are to get this continuous learning. It costs nothing. Now, we've even got a skills development levy in this country for skilling people. To me, it's gone nowhere. It's not being used. It's been absolutely wasted. There is a pot of money to invest in this change, this significant change, and possibly bringing in people with different mindsets around continuous learning, as opposed to setting up some kind of training process for people. And that is a shift. And yes, it's happening in some areas. And I'm just thinking now as I'm speaking, I had a great example this morning. I was on a call with a very large organization, and they'd sent out certain online training that people needed to do before they got on the call. And the person stated, I am so surprised at how many people actually went and did the more in-depth development training than just the introductory training. And I'm going, well, just show them where to go. They will drink the juice.
Very important that organizations adopt this continuous learning as we living in this digital age. I'm just thinking of organizations that they are willing probably to automate. They are willing to adopt these technologies and, of course, transform their organizations. But you find that maybe there are some, I'll say maybe small and medium-sized organizations who probably have the appetite, they have the desire, but they don't know where to begin, and maybe what advice can you give to such an organization to say, okay, where do we begin? Do we transform our HR? Do we start with our finance function or our marketing function? But we need to automate, otherwise we'll be left behind. What advice can you give to such an organization?
So first of all, a small organization with that mindset, you can only be successful because already has the mindset. That's my first thing. It's a lot easier actually for smaller organizations to make that shift and for the small to gobble up the large because they can move fast. So that for me is the first thing. And I think, Johan, I see you nodding your head because I think you'll agree with me. The corporates tend to trip over themselves with process and procedure and rules and regulations that holds all this up. So a smaller organization has the flexibility and agility to do it. The next thing, most technologies today, you can download trial versions of the technology free of charge to start learning the technology. There's no cost. And most technologies as well have academies that you can join and you can go through detailed training at no cost. Your investment is, first of all, your enthusiasm, your mindset, and some time. And you can very easily get yourself up to speed on these technologies. I think the second part of the question is, where do you start? And it's different courses for different environments. There's no one size fits all. It very much depends on your organization. And the answer I have is, where's the problem? That's the simple question. Where is the problem? So, if the problem is in the accounting department, month-end reconciliations, and to get the financial information out in time, and people are working their weekends to get that done, there's a problem. Then you know where to go and have a look. Okay. Another example could be, you mentioned HR. So maybe a company has got a huge issue it's got lots of workers out in the field, but they've got a huge issue with sick leave. We've seen this quite often. And people send in sick notes, but managers are too busy to look at the sick notes. So they just approve the sick note, and they discover that half the workers are sending in sick notes from the same doctor that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is huge cost to your company if you're a small business. And if you've got, an automation running that first checks all of that documentation that comes through and then sends an email to the manager and says, this looks okay, or there's something fishy here, then they know what to look for. And you're saving time, money, all sorts of things. There are endless examples. Again, you look at a completely different environment. Look at marketing, which is, again, not an obvious one that people talk about. But typically automation, you look for a problem where there's high volume of repetitive work taking place. Yeah. And you have a look at an organization that is sending out promotional offers. And again, you look at a small business, that it takes a lot of time for a human to sit and do and send out promotional offers either to dedicated people or to dedicated areas or on specific products. You can design that once and use many. And you can wake up, the exec can wake up in the morning and say, I want to run a promotion on product A to Nigeria. Okay. Literally, you take that process that's designed to run the promotion, you design, say which process it was, where it's going to go, and off it goes. And you can reach millions of people. But maybe he based that because there was a news article was relevant to his product. So you can now become relevant. So the relevancy of the technology really depends on first of all, where the problem is. But then secondly, around people understanding what automation can do. And that's the part where I think people haven't yet got their head around. And that's where there's still this concern around automation is going to take jobs, because traditionally in our market, we're only seeing people automating current processes. So what's happening is you've got a current process now running a lot faster.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoopie-doo, all right? Yes, it does help. But what you should be doing is now taking those people who are not doing those mundane tasks and using their brain's trust to say, right, what can we now do with this army of people that we could never have hired, but I've now got in the form of technology? Now you're moving towards the art of the possible. So if I could send out a promotion to all the stores 3 times a day, what could I do, for argument's sake? Now somebody's thinking about their promotion and the relative stores. They're not worrying about trying to send an email to the store manager and make sure they got it and things like that, because the process is doing that. So, again, quite a long answer to your question. There's not a one size fits all. It's very much about the organization, but the best starting point is finding a problem, solving the problem, and through that there is an understanding of the art of the possible, of what can be done. And typically the problem owner, who's now not working till midnight every night, becomes your Zoom evangelist, as I call it, and says on the next meeting, you're not going to believe, I didn't work till midnight last night for the first month in 5 years because my robot did the work. And the next person says, okay, well, maybe it can help me here. And it becomes a domino effect.
So much wisdom. And you know what, Lenore, I often think, I speak to some super duper smart people, but it often just comes to common sense and obviously experience. And I often laugh at these mind maps that I see in meetings, and, the people missing the obvious. But maybe just to change the topic a bit before we conclude, a topic that's close to my heart, but obviously close to yours, is gender equality in the corporate space, especially in technology. And I think we've made some progress since, to say, the 1960s or so. But just yesterday, I spoke to a close friend of mine who is a senior person in tech in one of our big banks. And she was almost crying about, how she's not being heard. She's much younger than her peers, and she's female. And I think for us as men, it's something we need to constantly be aware of. But maybe what I want to ask you as a concluding question, if young females and young female technology leaders are looking at or watching this video, what would be some of the advice that you can give them about surviving this male nonsense and working smartly to kind of climb the ladder?
We definitely don't have long enough for this one. But, you know, it's still very much a male-dominated environment. You know, my entire career has been about working in a male-dominated environment. Qualifying as a chartered accountant, I think the year I qualified, there were 5 women. And we've seen how that's radically changed, which has been fantastic. And the IT industry has changed dramatically as well. There are a lot more women, but sadly not enough women in leadership. And I think part of the reason is it's a pretty much cutthroat kind of environment, the IT world. The pressures are huge, and women don't really have that dog-eat-dog way of doing things. They kind of like to get down and get things done, and not really got it around dealing with the politics, if I can put it that way. You know, we always talk about the boys' club. The boys' club is very real. Make no mistake, the boys look after the boys. But I think what I have seen is I've seen more recently the girls' club forming in leadership, and I strongly recommend that. You know, we don't tend to like to share when we're having a tough time. You know, men will go to the pub and pour it all out and it's all over and it's good. Whereas if a woman generally pours out when she's having a tough time, she's just being emotional. Sadly, that's just the way it is. And that's the way we're conditioned. But I'm finding more women sticking together, having women's networks, sharing some of their challenges as well. And we are now starting to also see factual evidence of companies that have got more women on their boards of being more successful. There are now been more and more studies finally that have been done to show that. And again, you know, some of it is you have boards that put women on as frankly as women as window dressing. And then you've got other boards which are incredibly powerful boards run by women. I mean, the one that jumps to mind is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Incredibly powerful organization. And you know, so it's a case about perseverance. Don't give up. And I think women tend to give up easier because of our conditioning. Well, you kind of the inferior party in the relationship at home quite often, and you've brought up you've had the child, so now you need to, maybe if your job doesn't work out, but the man's job has to. And as a result of that, that also creates a mindset. Whereas I find if you have to, you will. And I say to all women, you absolutely have to be successful. Don't be suppressed. There's no reason why you can't have a career, a family, children, and be everything you want to be. You can make it happen. You know, I've got 2 children, also both in the tech industry, by the way. Yes, mom wasn't around a lot, but I've had my knocks, and life is about knocks, and you're going to have knocks in life. It's just how it happens. The corporate world is about knocks, but don't go back into your hole because you have a knock. You have to do this. So you stand up and you go and find your next opportunity. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, it's even more exciting than what you were doing before. So don't, you know, let yourself, and that's to anybody. I think it's not only a woman thing. It's a diversity question, a broad diversity question, you know. And I see, you know, Zenzele nodding his head, and I think you know exactly what I'm referring to. And that's why, you know, use your mentors, build your networks, make sometimes your networks, because you're going to be down, you're going to get knocked. The sands shift, but it doesn't mean that, you know, everything has gone away. Just go with the shifting sands and move on to the next, and find the right mentors in your life and the right leaders that you can relate to at all levels, from your own morals and your own ethics, And as long as you're going to bed and you're sleeping well every night and proud of who and what you are, your personal brand is more important than any company brand, in my opinion.
Continuous learning is very important in order for us to be able to transform our organizations. This technology is for everyone. Anyone who is anyone can participate. Lenore, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us those insights. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you both, and all the best for your upcoming event.